number 19.
Through your worship. I know where you have to move one pole. There's a proposed pole between lots 19 and 21, which I can show. This is the proposed hydro pole or telephone pole location, hydro pole, I guess. That was what Essex Power. That's where they wanted us to locate it, and that was located based on photometrics of the street.
So is it on Ms. Blaine's property or between the two?
That's the proposed location is between the two properties.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm going to finish up with Councillor Jacobs if I may, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, Matt, are we expropriating or taking any property other than municipal property? Her comment was she's losing half a driveway. Are we, is the developer purchasing property or are you just using municipal property?
Through your worship, the developer is buying municipal lands within the municipal right-of-way, and he's also giving up a piece of his property to the municipality to make the cul-de-sac work with the sidewalks. But there's no expropriation.
So there's no taking of land that belongs to, as the lady said, you're going half her driveway, that's already on municipal property anyway then, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Councillor Wilkinson.
Matt, if you don't mind, again, with your cursor, can you show me exactly where Ms. Blaine's driveway is located at there and where the proposed pole would be, please?
Okay. It's through your worship. It's cut off a little bit right here, but it says proposed location. I believe this is the new location of the pole.
Okay.
And this is the existing. This says proposed hydro pole relocation. So I think this is the pole that's being relocated. It's being moved to this location.
And that white portion that I'm seeing back towards the east, is that her driveway, though? Does that represent the driveway?
Correct. I believe this is her driveway.
And the pole is just going to be a little bit west of that, though, from where your cursor's at?
Correct. It'll be where my cursor is at.
All right, so I'm not getting where the pole would take up. But it's not affecting your driveway per se, though. Okay. All right. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Ms. Blaine.
Is there anyone else that wants to speak? Anyone else in the audience care to speak to this? No? I'll ask the lights to get put back on if you don't mind, Deputy Mayor. So if there are not any more, there are no more questions of council, I will ask what your wishes are, because this is actually a public meeting, but one we can decide on this evening. Another question, that's absolutely fine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just out of curiosity, the question was asked earlier, what is the timelines for this project? Matt, you mentioned it's going to be at least a year before you do the cul-de-sac. What are you looking at, 2 or 3 years for this proposal to be complete?
Your Worship, it depends on how fast the approval process, if we get approved for all of the, the cul-de-sac being moved and then site plan approval, we're waiting on all these issues. And then we would still have to, get the completion of the architectural drawings. It's a process, and it could take, depending on funding, anywhere from 1 to 2 years before we even start.
You're looking at beginning within 1 to 2 years, so you'll be looking at 3 to 4 years before this thing is actually complete then, correct? It'll take you at least a year to put this together, correct?
At least, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you too, Mr. Marsh.
Thank you.
Council, start with Councillor Wilkinson.
I just want to make sure, Madam Mayor, this is the appropriate time for us to give our opinions to the matter. That'd be correct?
Sure, we can have a discussion.
And I think that would address, I think Mr. Frederick was looking for some feedback from council. I just wanted to wait till we heard all the public comments, before we weigh in. I think it was Councilor Hammond that said this road has been through a lot over the last 2 years, and it's a beautiful little road. I didn't discover it until the Starbucks started going in, and I've had some meetings with some of the affected residents on that road who I know are dealing with the impacts and the fallouts financially from the sewer improvements there. So I take that into account as well. You might not appreciate this, but I think this is the best of I think the developers have gone out of their way here to try to explain the best case scenario they can bring forward for what I consider to be a good investment. There is a need for housing in this community. That property back there, I'm kind of amazed that somebody had the ability, the foresight to actually look back there and say, I could put up a pretty nice development back there and bring something to the community that this needs. We know that there is a big need in our community for housing. Saying that, I realize that you're going to be impacted. I think they've done their best to say that they're going to come in off of Shirk. In fact, they've created that easement that's going to lessen the impact to Parkdale. I think the Reeds, I think you're going to be the ones affected the most on this entire road. I think it looks a little askew, the way your driveway is going to be. But as a council member, Mr. Frederick, I think I got to look at it from the big perspective here for the community. I think it is a good investment. In fact, I welcome this type of investment in our community. I commend these men for coming into our community and having the foresight to do something like this. So I think the inconveniences, and I know they're great to Parkdale residents, are there, but that's how I will be supporting this, is that I think it's for the greater good of the community that we do go ahead with this project, and that means not so much closing off that cul-de-sac, but moving it forward. I hope that, the impact is not too great on the affected residents, but I will be supporting the project here so far from what I've seen. Thank you.
Councillor Dunn.
To you, Madam Mayor. My question is regarding how many apartments are we looking at here?
Based on the sewer capacity, we're looking at 54 units per building. Is that?
Thank you.
Councillor Hammond, I have you next.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councillor Wilkinson summed up my thoughts in its entirety. I won't repeat everything he said, but we are in dire need of housing in this community, as well as our neighboring cities and communities are as well. We've got a lot of homeless people who we see the property values going crazy in town, and that's because there isn't any. So we enter all of those things into our minds when it comes to making these decisions. But one thing that, that I think it's important to note is that we maybe as a council could stop the shortening of Parkdale, but I don't think we can stop some form of development happening back in there, whether it be 10 stories or 8 stories, whether it be 2 buildings or 1. We can't stop that type of development. We know that we can see the frustration from the people on Park Street. I know 3 or 4 people down there that I talk to regularly, and I understand where you're coming from. You're fed up, and I get it. And some of these letters that we'd received about having to walk with your groceries for like blocks at night. I understand that. However, I think when it's all said and done, I think the impact to Parkdale may be a little less traffic because we've eliminated 2 or 3 potential properties at the end. Yeah, I think you're going to get more foot traffic. I don't think there's much doubt about that. But again, I think Councillor Wilkinson, in my view, summed it up very well. And when entering into a decision, I too think I'm going to have to support the shortage of shrinking up of Parkdale for those reasons I gave.
Anyone else? Well, I'm going to speak to it as well, and we don't want you to think this is going to be a solution for homelessness. This is just a solution for housing housing that is mid-range, that we are losing simply for a whole bunch of reasons that there's no point into going into tonight. So it is an advantage to our community to have this level, and it looks like a really nice level of housing. It's in an area that's open. It's in an area there's sewer capacity, because we are asked many times over whether developers can build in a certain area, and a lot of times there is not sewer capacity. Here there is sewer capacity. Yes, it changes your neighborhood. My neighborhood was changed when a greenhouse went in behind my house after I had lived there for 25 years. You also have to recognize that council has to make decisions, again with the big picture, but also what is legal. If these gentlemen took us to court, we would not have a good enough reason to turn this down. And we need to look at it through that lens. What are they allowed to do? They have purchased this property. I'm sure they're paying for that easement to drive over to their land in the back. They're investing in our community, which means more people come in, more people pay for the taxes. It's all for the betterment of us. I know there are inconveniences, but that is, again, it's a price that we pay. There will be people that will be inconvenienced. I'm sure you are. I'm sure you have, we called it infrastructure fatigue. That's what happens when we try to put in new roads and new opportunities for our residents. We get inconvenienced for a while. You will find a new way to adapt. I'm sorry you will be influenced negatively for some time, but for us, we have to weigh it. It's a balance, and as Councillor Hammond said, we have to look at it as what is better for the good of the municipality, for the good of the greater amount of people. Again, we know your street isn't going to be what it was like 15 years ago or 20 years ago, but that's the world. None of us have what we had 20 years ago. It's change, it's progress, it's whatever you want to call it. I apologize if you're not happy. I apologize for your inconvenience, but the decision has to be made. It's what's good for everyone in the community. So I will be supporting this as well. So with that, if there are no other comments or questions, what is council's wishes? I would entertain a motion moved by the deputy. The recommendation by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to a report regarding investing in Canada infrastructure program, which is the public transit stream, and that is you, Mr. Sharon.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, or ICIP, and in this particular report we're dealing with the public transit stream, is a federal program that will fund construction, expansion, improvement to public transit systems. Earlier this year, the municipality received notification that we will be receiving $472,000 as part of this program. And while the allocation amount has been determined already, the municipality still has to go through an application process, submit their proposed project to the province, who then vets it on behalf of the federal government and provides approval if our submission is in line with the program guidelines. Administration is recommending that we use the $470,000 to purchase 2 new low-floor conventional transit buses. And there is a map of these buses in the report. They're very similar to full-size transit buses that we're used to seeing, only they're shorter, recognizing that we don't need the capacity of a full-size transit bus. In 2020, based on our 5-year capital plan and the expected useful life of our existing buses, the municipality did budget to replace our 2 existing cutaway buses. As council can see, a picture of those on the left. The total cost of those was estimated to be $400,000, $200,000 apiece. These funds that the federal government has provided must be incremental spending, meaning that these funds can't replace planned municipal expenditures on our transit system. The conventional transit buses are a much better quality. They're designed to be a transit bus as opposed to the cutaway style, which basically builds a transit cab on a chassis. These buses are better quality. They have almost twice the useful life, definitely exceed twice the amount of kilometers that you can put on these buses. They provide a much more comfortable ride for the users and just a much better experience. Administration is proposing that we would consider either a 9-meter or a 10.5-meter transit bus. They have 18 seats and 2 wheelchairs, or 24 seats and 2 wheelchairs respectively. The reason that we would consider the 10.5 meter is not necessarily because there's a specific demand for that amount of ridership, but simply that the cost is very similar. Based on our discussions with Metrolinx, there's only a $10,000 difference, and we would basically get 30% additional seating capacity. But we don't have to make that decision tonight. That can happen later date when we go through the actual procurement process, should council approve this tonight and should the province accept our submission. Your worship, as noted in the report, administration continues to work on our transit master plan, which is a strategic plan for expanding our transit services to try and meet the needs of Leamington, not only today, but Leamington residents in the future. That is a work in process. Unfortunately, in a perfect world, we'd have everything lined up in a row, the strategic plan in front of council, and then we could have these discussions after that. However, that is still a work in process, and the applications are due May 28th. But later this year, we will have a discussion regarding the strategic plan of our transit service. And regardless of the service level improvements that council decides to make on the system, even if council decides to hold the line on service levels for transit, these would certainly be a huge benefit to our transit service. As noted in the financial impacts section, the total cost to purchase these 2 buses would be $880,000. So we would essentially take the $400,000 we planned to spend on our 2 conventional transit buses. We would use the $472,000 grant, spend an additional $8,000, and the entire purchase is funded and in line with the net incremental requirements of spending. This particular program funds, as noted in the report, capital infrastructure only. So for our small transit system, that leaves us to rolling stock buses or investment in particular transit stops. Really, that's the extent, concrete along our stops essentially, or maybe bus shelters. That's the extent of where we could spend the money given our transit system. So, Your Worship, the recommendation before Council tonight is that Council approve an application to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program for the purpose of purchasing 2 low-floor conventional transit buses.
Great, thank you, Mr. Sharon. Councilor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Rob. Rob, if you could, it just says longer life expectancy, but if you could take some sort of a guess at what would you hope this, how many years would you expect to get from this bus? How many miles? What would be your worst case scenario, best case scenario, you think?
Sure. Through Your Worship, that's a good question, Councillor. I did have specific numbers in the report, but because they depend on a number of different things, they ended up removing those numbers. But I can tell you, carrying an amortization of 12 years, a life cycle of 12 years is probably conservative. Not suggesting that we do this again, but if you remember, we replaced the 1991 Orion in 2013, so the last full conventional transit bus we ran here in Leamington, we had 22 years out of the bus. Probably extended it quite a few years beyond when we should have.
Sure.
But you can really, if you look after these vehicles and do the preventive maintenance and scheduled refurbishment, you can get a long, useful life out of them. Exceeding 1 million kilometers is not outside the realm of possibility for these buses. So they're real quality pieces of equipment.
And I think we also have to consider a little bit, there is cost recoveries with the buses, both ridership, maybe advertising. There is some cost recoveries that come back on this investment as well. So I think that's worthwhile mentioning.
Great, thank you. I have Deputy Mayor next.
Thank you, worthy Mayor, through you to Rob. Rob, we're going to have the same situation. We're going to own the buses and somebody else is going to operate them?
That's correct.
Okay, and expect the longer life that these are going to be clear burning diesel buses, and we won't be blowing black smoke out and getting calls because of the emissions?
That's correct, through your worship. Diesel buses certainly meeting all current environmental emissions requirements.
And that's it?
For now.
Thank you. Paul Thiessen?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Rob, the $400,000, can we use that to purchase one bus and then delay purchasing the second bus for a couple of years? Do they both need replacing right now? Is there any way we can cost save that way?
Through your worship, both of the buses were purchased at the same time, so they've both reached the end of their useful life. And I think the lesson that we've learned over owning these cutaway buses over the last 7 years, because they've only 7 years was the predicted useful life, and I would suggest they haven't even given us that necessarily. They haven't died, meaning some sort of catastrophic failure, but we've replaced transmissions, multiple compressors. They just couldn't withstand, what we were putting them through with this 7 to 7, 6 to 8 week service. And again, if it expands, the cutaway style just wouldn't make it. The procurement method through Metrolinx, and I note some information about Metrolinx in the report. It's a provincial agency that procures on a bulk basis and really gets the participants, the members who are involved with Metrolinx, a really good price, certainly better than we could get on our own.
Councillor Dunn?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Rob, my question is, in these pictures, they show bike racks on the front of the cutaways and not on new bike. Will we have bike racks on the new buses?
Yes, through your worship, we would certainly put bike racks on them, Councillor. It's limited. I think the best we can do is 2 buses. Two bikes per bus, but we could look into that, and maybe there's a possibility to have more than that. But yes, we with council's support of the active transportation master plan and everything we do to promote a healthy lifestyle in the municipality, we would ensure to have those.
And further? The other question is, I see the ramp there. How does that ramp operate, just for curiosity's sake? Are you sure? I know you haven't purchased it yet, but...
Your worship, if I may, Alan actually had looked at a demo of the bus.
Certainly. Alan?
Did you attend when they reviewed the bus? You weren't there. I sent 3 staff up. Yeah, so it just folds, right, Alan? That's my understanding, but I didn't want to say that without...
Folds on,
yes.
huh?
Yes, I believe they simply fold out and then they fold back. But before I said that, we did have 3 staff members go up and take a look at the bus and go through it. Thought I was one, but it was not.
Thank you. Sorry, just a little ahead of the cart, I guess, but I just seen that picture and I thought, how did that operate? Thank you.
Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is sort of out of speculation, Rob. I guess with the introduction coming this year with transit, between Transit Windsor moving back and forth, would you anticipate, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but our ridership maybe would increase to make connections with this town, providing services to Windsor and so forth? I guess I'm looking sort of ahead in the future a little bit, but I like the concept of this type of a bus that's able to hold that capacity if we get to it.
Yes, through you, Your Worship. Certainly, that's our Hope Counselor. We're going to be running the service between Leamington and Windsor. Once riders land in Leamington at the recreation complex, that is a stop along our existing route and would be a stop in any recommended route in the future. So certainly arriving in Leamington, we're hoping that they would, users would ride the bus because it's on the route. I didn't include it in the report, frankly, because I don't know if it was necessarily appropriate, but there's literature out there that suggests simply moving your infrastructure, your rolling stock infrastructure, from this cutaway style bus to a conventional transit bus just increases ridership, and people see it as a real transit system. They start seeing it as a real option to having to drive everywhere within a community. So we're certainly hoping that between this and some of the improvements that we'll discuss later on in this year, that we'll see a lot greater ridership. And the way our Ontario Transit Gas Tax works in Ontario, the greater the riders, the greater the grant you receive every year to run your transit system.
I have the Deputy Mayor next.
Where the mayor thanks, we're talking planes and submarines. Can you guarantee us that these buses are new and not refurbished out of Toronto's Metrolinx and just been repainted and refurbished at something? Just want to make sure that they're new.
Your Worship,
If you want to answer
Deputy
that.
Mayor, I think it's probably the only guarantee I've given council since I started here, but we guarantee they will be brand-new buses from the manufacturer.
Stellar report.
Can I just, may I comment? Just to Councillor Thiessen's hesitation, Councillor Verbicki and I were against the two buses when we purchased them, however many years ago that was. And it really proved to be a smart purchase because of the fact that there was one down and we had another one. But further to this, we're also looking, and if I can say this, Rob, at this point in time, we are looking to make our bus system more efficient and in making the times better, perhaps two routes run at the same time. So I think when we have this opportunity, we've already put that money aside via the budget, and we've got this gift coming from the upper levels. I do believe it is a good time to do it, and I think also when we shorten the routes, make the routes more efficient by having two buses, I do believe we will also get more ridership too. Some people don't like to wait that the full hour. They might just have a quick run and then have to fill in time. And if the bus comes more frequently, I do think more people will ride it. So I just wanted to give you let you know we felt the same way at one point in time, but we were proven to be wrong. So anyway, with that said, you were going to make a motion, Councillor Hammond, and seconded by Councillor Dunn. And with that, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Rob. So moving on to a delegation. Results of the third-party evaluation of the On Track to Success program with Leamington and Windsor, and also a presentation on Cradle to Career Strategy. We welcome Lorraine Goddard and Liam Giles Hayes. Thanks for waiting so patiently.
No problem. Thank you very much, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Lorraine Goddard. I'm the CEO of United Way Windsor Essex, and I'm going to hand it over to Liam Giles Hayes, and he's going to start our presentation off this evening.
Sorry. Thank you, Lorraine, and thank you, Your Worship and members of Council. I just wanted to walk you through, and actually we'll just grab the slide so we can turn the slides for you, to update you a little bit about our third-party evaluation that was conducted by Dr. Rajiva Sinha at the University of Windsor. And so, as you know, the On Track to Success program has been in Leamington now for 4 years. And we really wanted to get a third party to evaluate the success of the program and to see actually what our impact was. So I'll just go to the next slide. Oh, perfect. Okay, great. Thank you. So what they were able to do, working alongside the school boards, is they created a comparison group of students. So students who are from economically or living in economically disadvantaged families, who were also identified as struggling in school in their grade 8 year, and students with high absenteeism rates. And what we actually found that when comparing students in the On Track program is that their grades were actually 6% higher on their report cards. In addition, they missed 3.5 days less per term than students not in the program. But really significantly was the fact that when you identified or had teachers assess their soft skills, such as organization, their initiative, their self-regulation, on a 4-point scale, that actually scored a whole point higher than students not in the program. So the results are there in terms of our level of intervention, and those soft skills are really important when it comes to employability as adults. We also asked them through the developmental asset profile what their commitment to learn was, their social competencies. So we asked them questions such as, are they motivated to do well in school? Do they report doing at least 1 hour of homework every school day? Do they have empathy, sensitivity, friendship skills? Can they resist negative peer pressure in dangerous situations? And in all categories, the difference is quite significant. So when it comes to commitment to learn, over a 30% different. The second highest here is their empowerment. As part of the evaluation, though, Dr. Sinha really connected and hosted stakeholder meetings. So he worked alongside and connected with parents who have been impacted by the program, but as well as school staff and administration, because our program is located and works alongside both Cardinal Carter and Leamington District Secondary. And so some of the feedback from the parents is really the impact of having that supportive, trusted adult in the child and the family's life was really essential in terms of helping turn their child's life around. They felt as though their children had higher aspirations, that they wanted to go to university or college now, something that before the students never mentioned. They liked that the success coach was an advocate. So since they are not paid by the school board, they had someone to turn to in case they had issues with either the education system or just systems navigation support in general. And finally, the wraparound support. They noticed that the success coach helped the entire family, that their younger children now wanted to do well in school. So there was really a lot of unintended outcomes that were found through this report. And I have some future stats that's quite exciting. School boards, though, and school staff here locally really talked about the 2 p.m. to 8 a.m. effect. So the ability to call, text, and meet with the success coach after hours and following up with their problems identified at the school and having a solution by the morning. So again, addressing all of those issues or barriers that were preventing that student from attending school. So whether it be that they were up in the morning and they were babysitting because their parents are working shift work, or maybe their parents were back payment on a bill and they couldn't afford their electricity payment. So the fact that our program actually intervenes financially, but as well as through the success coach, that really eliminated some of that school attendance issues. So we wanted to just provide you with our first graduating cohort that's graduating this summer. So there's 35 students in total right here in Leamington, and 33 out of the 35 are graduating on time and planned on attending a post-secondary program this fall. We know that with local school board data, especially students that are considered in risk, are well below 80 to 85% graduation rates on time. So this is statistically significant. We're currently trending towards a 94% post-secondary participation rate, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in my next slide. But I just want to give you a financial impact. So over $100,000 in bursaries are actually be awarded this year to on-track graduates right here in Leamington alone. Again, making post-secondary much more affordable for these children and youth and the families. It definitely lessens some of the burden and the worries when it comes to investing in post-secondary. So my final slide here before I turn it back to Lorraine is just really talking, it's actually a Statistics Canada report that looked at post-secondary attendance rate by parental income quintile. And so the majority of the students enrolled in the On Track to Success program would meet either the bottom quintile or the second lowest quintile. So if you take a look, they're right around about 50% attendance rate for most students that come from this sort of socioeconomic background. But the star there at the top is where currently On Track is trending. So it's actually above the highest income quintile. We know that obviously through something called the summer melt, we might not get all of those students to go on to post-secondary because we know there's additional barriers. Many students and parents are already talking about how the child tax benefit after 18 and that pressure, that new pressure that family is feeling now that that child has turned 18. So we still have a lot of work to do, but we're very proud that 94% of the students are planning on attending post-secondary in the fall. Part of this program is really to let them know that not going to post-secondary isn't really an option. And they have the capacity and the ability to do this. And so we're there to support them and their families through this. So I now want to pass it over to Lorraine, who's going to speak on behalf of the Prosper Us and our new Cradle to Career strategy.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. So we're really excited to realize this success with our first cohort of students right here in Leamington. The On Track to Success program was launched initially in Leamington in 2015. And over the past 4 years, United Way had a great opportunity here to really learn from this program about the barriers, lack of opportunity, and the challenges that economically disadvantaged families and their children face in order for them to be successful. And it's a lot of hard work because by the time we're seeing these young people who are 13, 14 years old, they've already gone through a lot in their lives. And it really helped us to understand that if we can go upstream and we can start to work with young people at an earlier age, we could actually prevent some of these problems and have even greater success. And so this really started United Way as an organization to really think about what's happening in our community. We know that poverty rates are continuing to climb. The playing field is not that level for many families and their children. And our United Way had to really ask itself some tough questions. Do we have a role to really dig in on this issue? And what would it take for us to do that? And our board of directors felt that, United Way does have a role and that we can take a leadership role. And we call this getting to the moonshot. For some of you who might be my age, I can remember being in school when Armstrong first stepped on the moon. It was a feat that President Kennedy said they were going to make happen, and no one ever believed that it could. And so it did happen. It was a lot of hard work, and it took dollars, and it took perseverance. But I could remember, I won't say what grade I was watching it on TV, but I certainly remember that happening, and it was very exciting. And so, yes, in our community, we have some really tough challenges, but we're making a commitment to get to the moonshot and help some of the most disadvantaged children in our community. Because we do have a burning platform. Across Windsor-Essex County, 1 in 4 kids are growing up in low-income families. In Leamington specifically, it's almost 17%, almost 31% of children under the age of 5, and our total youth population about 23%. And that poses significant barriers for success. When you look at the early developmental scores for children starting grade 1 and the EQAO scores, in some schools, less than a quarter are actually meeting provincial standards. And when that happens in grade 3, if you're not meeting provincial standards in grade 3, you're 30 times more likely not to graduate high school. So that's really a growing problem for us. And we know that nationally, all the research tells us that all of the economic drivers locally are going to require post-secondary education, whether it's the trades, college, university. So if we're having a large population of young people who are at risk of not even graduating high school, how are we going to train our young people for jobs that are here and for the future? And we're already hearing from employers, we have jobs that we can't fill, and we have people without jobs. So we need to close that gap. And so our community vision, and this vision is a community, it's not a United Way vision alone. We are just one partner, and the brand, you may have heard, is called Prosper Us. And it is a collective of more than 45 system leaders who have made a commitment to stand shoulder to shoulder to advance what we're calling a cradle to career strategy in key neighborhoods. And here this continuum identifies 6 milestones, and I'll just really highly explain it. The first one is the little baby on the end. And what we're talking about is ensuring that more children are kindergarten ready. But that also includes looking at ensuring that moms have access to good prenatal care. Because we know that if a child is born low birth weight, it has potential negative consequences it has to deal with all its life. The next 2 milestones are grade 3 and grade 6. We know that we have standardized testing. We need to make sure young people perform better in these tests and get the support they need, because that will then help position them for future academic and work success. The middle one is high school graduation. Youth at risk are at risk of not graduating, so we have to help more young people graduate. And the last 2 are around careers, ensuring that young people get into careers where there's actually a job and that they can then enter their job within a year of graduation, because the research tells us if you don't, you're less likely to have the same earning potential as your colleague who does get a job. And I use the example of how many of us know young people who went to teachers college and can't get a job teaching. I know some that are actually in the retail industry. And so they don't have the earning potential of their counterparts who actually are teaching. So that's, I think, a simple example. But it's not just about tutoring programs. It's about ensuring access to those social determinants of health, access to physical and mental health, food and nutrition, academic achievement, affordable and safe housing, economic empowerment, and social inclusion. If we don't ensure all of those things for young people, we won't be successful. And that's really what On Track does, right? That's what that program does, is that we, those success coaches, I actually call them the problem solvers. They remove barriers and make sure that young people can focus on school, do well, and really work towards a successful future. The next slide is 2 illustrations, and it's how we're going to do this. It's through collective impact. For those of you who may not be familiar, the illustration on the left-hand side, the 3 green rings, that's kind of how we're working together in the sector. So if each ring represents 1 mental health, 1 food security, and 1 housing, and we say we're going to tackle poverty, and all those dots are the organizations and the actors in those fields, those little overlapping areas are about as much effort as we're working together to be able to actually address a complex problem like poverty. And what we're moving over to is the other side. It's called collective impact. It's about having a common agenda, knowing what we want to accomplish, having a standardized set of metrics that we're all going to track, and lining up your resources towards your common vision. And that's what those 45 members of Prosper Us have committed to do. And on the next slide is a list of, and I know you can't read it, but it's there just to show you, those are the folks from representing all sectors of our community, from business, higher education, pre-kindergarten right through to grade 12, government, nonprofit, labor community, public sector, and funders. And it continues to grow. And where we're seeing the most growth is in the business community, because the business community is saying, you know what, we need to dig in on this problem too, because we need to be able to help skill up people in this community, and let's start a lot younger. How we're going to do this too is through a lens, an equity lens, and this illustration really explains it. And I would argue that part of the reason why we've left so many young people behind is that we tend to invest using a lens of equality, that we give everybody the same amount. But when you think about those 3 people trying to look over the fence, and you give everyone a 12-inch box to get over the fence, only one person can actually see. And what we have to do as our community is say, we need to ensure that people who need the most get what they need in order to get to the start line, in order to get to the finish line. And United Way has been an investor that focused on equality. We didn't focus on equity, and we've actually contributed to leaving people behind. And so how we're going to do this is that we have been collecting data. We've entered into data sharing agreements with 11 different organizations, from school boards, university, college, police forces, municipalities, the health units, Children's Aid Society, the LIN, the list goes on. And we're mapping all that data neighborhood by neighborhood so that we really understand what's happening right in neighborhoods. And so we will be releasing a baseline report by summer, which will identify the neighborhoods most in need, and we're going to invest through an equity lens in strategies that align to the cradle to career, to be able to help young people and their families lift themselves up. And that's our vision for our community. So to date, some of our successes is that we have an agreed upon common agenda. We have 45 plus cross-sector partners standing shoulder to shoulder. And we have the first ever community-wide data sharing agreement in place, which is a first not only for our community, but actually across Canada. And so our work going forward on the last slide is at a very high level. The baseline report will be released and will identify the neighborhoods that we will start in, not finish in, but start in. Then we will be convening tables in those neighborhoods that will be comprised of local residents, service organizations that have mandates within to deliver on certain supports, and subject matter experts like early years experts and folks like that, to really identify what do we need to do first that's really going to help people right in their own neighborhoods. And then we're going to be convening a table. We have commitments from philanthropists, foundations that are even outside of our community, government, and other donors that have made a commitment to put dollars on the table and as partners come to the table to invest in these cradle to career strategies over the long haul. And so that will happen later in 2020 with a full rollout by 2021. So we wanted to share this vision with you. It's very exciting. It's the first of its kind in our community, but I can tell you Cradle to Career has been implemented in 70 communities in the U.S. They have experienced significant success in improving child and youth outcomes, which is really the driver for ultimately economic success. And so we are learning from our colleagues across the border, and this is the first time we're bringing it into the Canadian context, and there's lots of interest across the country with this work. So we hope that we can continue to keep you apprised, and if we end up in Leamington, that we can become partners with the municipality of Leamington as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lorraine and Liam. To me, this is exciting. This is an opportunity to get those children that are born into disadvantage, if you will, it helps them get off that wheel.
Yeah.
Because so many times the poverty is just repeated generation after generation, and this to me is hope.
Yes.
It's hope for kids, it's hope for their families, it's hope for their children, which up until now, we've not been able to deal with that.
No.
So seeing you take this in hand, and you've already are showing the results, Liam, those figures are fantastic. to impact children's lives in a positive way and to give them a future I get choked up just thinking about it because so many never have that opportunity. And yet the solution is simple, right? It's just about reaching out and sharing and taking someone under your wing. And so many times they have disadvantages in their parents, whether it's addictions or mental health. It's beyond their control, so they never get to break through. So this to me is hopeful. And it's a legacy that we can leave to future generations. I hope to heck we get chosen. So anyway, are there any comments or questions from my colleagues on council? Councillor Hammond.
Your worship, thank you. To Lorraine and Liam, I can tell by the enthusiasm in your voices that you're passionate about what's going to take place. We're excited about hopefully being able to help you establish in our community. And as to the mayor's request, we would like you to seriously consider coming to Leamington.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Great, thanks so much to both of you. I'll be at Prosperous. I'll talk to my colleagues as well. I haven't had that opportunity yet. I talked to my Mayor's Youth Advisory Group as well. And I've posted on social media, so hopefully we'll get a good turnout in our community.
Oh, yes, the data walks, yes, please.
Good, yeah, for the
And come
data
out to the
walks.
data walks. It's a great opportunity, Your Worship and members of council, to not only learn a little bit more about what's happening in our community and in our neighborhoods, but to hear from residents who are impacted by that. And to hear what would be helpful to them. So, if you have the opportunity, I would really encourage you to join in on the data walk that's in Leamington on Tuesday, May 21st.
At the Roma Club.
There's one in the afternoon at 1 or one in the evening at 5 p.m. at the Roma Club.
Great, thank you
Great,
both.
thank you.
Again, thanks for your patience. Appreciate the presentation as well. Did you have another question, Bill? Councillor? 1 till 5, 1 till 4 and 5 till 8?
Yes, correct.
Great, no problem. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the telecommunications broadcasting tower, the letter of concurrence for the 265 Talbot Street West address. And that is Danielle. You're next. We appreciate the patience. Go
I'll be
ahead.
quick. Thank you, Mayor McDonald. Administration has received a request on behalf of TELUS Communications from Land Solutions LP, and they are looking to install a new cell tower at 265 Talbot Street West. So that is the property we know as Afria. And that cell tower is being proposed to address coverage deficiency in the area to the surrounding operations that require the service. We have told council before that cell towers are regulated under the standards established by Industry Canada, and as such, the OBC and Planning Act do not apply to these types of facilities or infrastructure. However, the proponents are required to consult with us, and they are also required to satisfy public notification requirements. So as part of this review, Land Solutions has provided us with an information package. It included an overview of the project, an outline of the expected protocol with the municipality, as well as the site plans for where the proposed tower will be on the Afria site. The cell tower is proposed to be located at the rear of the property. If you can just scroll up a bit. There's a green dot on the map on the screen. It's going to be a 35-meter lattice-type tower. It'll be installed on a concrete pad in a fenced compound, and it'll include an equipment cabinet. The site plan was reviewed by the Development Support Committee. There were no concerns with stormwater management or fire route access. As part of the Industry Canada consultation process, Land Solutions has provided notification to the owners within the required setback distances. They as well published a notice in the South Point Sun. They advised that no public inquiries were received prior to that cutoff date of May 3rd. It is administration's opinion that the proposed tower is in a suitable location for the reasons that are provided within the report. And the recommendation this evening is that council direct administration to issue the requested letter of concurrence stating that TELUS Communications Incorporated has met the consultation requirements of Industry Canada's protocol for the installation of a 35-meter cell tower on the lands known as 265 Talbot West.
Thank you, Danielle. Did Mr. Panici want to speak? Do you know? No? I have no comments. Okay, thank you. Council, moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Jacobs. Comments, questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to the Marina Food and Beverage Service Provider for this evening.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I'm here with delegates Ty Getty and Jennifer Flynn representing the Grove. In 2018, the Kinsman Club provided beverage service on the marina patio. In 2018, we stopped service from the Kinsman who had provided it prior to that and had simply music for the Friday patio nights on the marina. It was expressed to us through consultation with a lot of the boaters that the desire to have service on the patio alongside the music was something that was important, as well as it aligned well with our tourism strategy. So this year we put out an RFP for craft food and beverage on the marina patio, which also aligned with our culinary strategy. The RFP closed on April 15th with one applicant, the Grove Brewing Corporation. The terms of the contract is 1 year at no fee to the Grove. I did want to note, sorry, that there is one addition to or change in the report, and that is that the business licensing bylaw is 0519, not 0319, recommendation 2.
Thank you.
Yes, so back to where I was. There's no financial impact to the municipality. We're recognizing that this is a service to be provided based on feedback from the community members, and the terms of any subsequent contract will be reviewed at the end of the year and decided upon then.
Great, thank you.
And I believe that the Grove had a couple of comments as well, Your Worship.
Please, go ahead and welcome.
I was nominated to speak, so I will.
Okay.
Your Worship and Council, I am Jennifer Flynn. I am the General Manager of the Grove Brewhouse and Hotel. Ty Getty is also involved with the Grove Brewhouse. So I just want to apologize that we didn't have the foresight being at the end of the agenda. We should have brought some beer, but didn't. So I apologize for that.
We have a long way to
We're
go.
kicking each other under the table going, darn it. So thank you. We just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity. Being a business right now, currently in Kingsville, given the opportunity to expand our operations into Leamington is a fantastic opportunity as far as we're concerned. So we would love and thank you for that opportunity. So we're going to bring our A game, guaranteed. That's how we do things. So we just want your support in that operation. We've also talked, in terms of long-term. This is something that we'd definitely be interested on a more long-term partnership. Tourism is what we're about, owning a hotel as well as the brewery operation. That's something definitely that we would love to look at in terms of Leamington. We feel like we were a huge part in the downtown revitalization in Kingsville that happened, so we would love to bring that enthusiasm and approach to the Leamington Marina. I think there's a fantastic opportunity for all of us, and thank you for the partnership opportunity.
You're welcome. We thank you. I am a Friday night at the marina patio person. I love the opportunity to sit and enjoy the music as well as the view. And there were quite a few people that commented on the inability to have drink and snacks down there. It is a night's entertainment. It's a Friday night's entertainment, and that just seems to go hand in hand with adult beverages and snacks. So I'm very pleased as well that you're coming. I think it adds to... I always talk about quality of life, but that's what it is, right? It's about making experiences in your community better for everyone. So I think that's a facet that will be added to our marina, and we're all welcome. Is there anyone else on council, Deputy Mayor, that would like to speak?
Deputy Mayor, thanks. So this is only for Friday nights, or is there a potential for other service they could do with different events that are happening, say, at the pavilion?
That was Kira.
In terms of the contract, the RFP was limited to Friday nights. If there is a desire for the Grove to do additional programming, then they would be required to rent the facility for that use. So we're bound to the terms which we asked for in the contract.
Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I've been to your restaurant, and the food was fabulous, and the atmosphere was incredible. It was really, really busy. I'm hoping that you bring that same A game, like you said, to our marina, and the food and the atmosphere. I think that'll really enhance it. So I really look forward to what you can do in showing us that opportunity.
So there is a motion there. Oh, Tim, I'm sorry, Jim. Mr.
you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
And Jennifer, you hit on all the points I was hoping you would touch on. We'd encourage you, please, opportunities are here in Leamington. We're excited about it as well, especially our tourism portfolio. Lots of different opportunities. We'd really like to see, encourage you to look more this way. So best of luck to you. I hope it works out.
Great. There is a recommendation. Moved by Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor Thiessen. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Looking forward to seeing you.